Pecha Kucha 289 looking at Hush again. So Hush is maybe the template for the story, the Batman story I spoke about last week, even though it happened only a paltry 2 years before. Hush is the story of a villain who's never before been seen, using all of the existing villains and Batman's own methodology against him to become his greatest threat ever. And as soon as the story ends, he goes right back into being a non-existent third party. The book is written by Jeff Loeb, illustrated by Jim Lee, either inked or coloured by Scott Williams. I can't remember who does what. And it's a really good book. It starts with Batman full on being the meme, taking out a bunch of criminals by being big brain, super IQ'd and exploiting their weaknesses. He's got all the best tech. He's got ruthlessly efficient at what he does. But while he's chasing Catwoman, swinging from building to building, someone breaks his bat line. He tumbles into a alleyway, almost dies, and this is the start of him being targeted by a nefarious individual who uses most of the cast and crew of Batman regulars against him in very dangerous ways. The thing about Batman being basically mash up in an alleyway where he gets kind of saved from a bunch of criminals by his own defenses, and then someone kind of pulls him into the Batmobile, it's a bit strong. He's basically crippled and can only communicate by tapping his fingers. Alfred picks up the Morse code that Bruce Wayne is using to basically introduce a character who Bruce Wayne's known his entire life, but it's never come up in the 50-60 year history of Batman to this point. And who is this person? Tommy Elliot, his one childhood friend, who is introduced through flashbacks with this fucking lovely art style where it's like ink and wash straight over Jim Lee's pencils. And it turns out basically Tommy Elliot is like Bruce Wayne, except he has no morals. He's a genius. And it's in no way, shape or form foreshadowing that he's the mysterious person who is going to be screwing with Batman. Speaking of screwing with Batman, at this point in Batman's career, he decides to start a long-term relationship with Catwoman, which kind of throws in this beautiful idea that Wayne, whatever he's doing, is constantly distracted by the fact he's in a relationship with Selina Kyle. This book also does a great job of, in the flashbacks, making Silver Age DC characters look epic. This is the kind of thing that makes you want to go back and read their books. So this really is a good entry book for people who want to understand why people give a shit about Batman. Also, supporting cast. Bruce Wayne goes to Metropolis to hang out with Lois Lane and Clark Kent for reasons. Again, this book is a lot of hot-shotting. It's a lot of stuff that's happening because it's cool, like Batman fighting Superman, because he's under the auspices of Poison Ivy, who is in the plot because she's one of Batman's villains who's being manipulated by a shadowy man in a trench coat. While I complain, I love the way the cast and crew are used. This is, if you're going to buy one Batman book, this probably isn't the book, but if you want to get a bunch of people interested in Batman over a long time, like the way Harley Quinn is in this, bouncing all over the place, making funny jokes. The one time Bruce Wayne actually goes outside and isn't wearing the bat suit, goes to the opera, and she's just shitting all over it. It's fucking brilliant. And that, the first book ends much like the Red Hood book, being very strong. I'm not really going to spoil who the villain is, other than saying who he is already. He does have a costumed identity, but there are also two other people who are arguably the mastermind of this entire state of affairs. But one of them is definitely not the Joker. One of Jeff Loeb's greatest accomplishments in this book is Bruce Wayne seems to be a fully fleshed out character. Many of his greatest moments, including most of the traumatic things the Joker's inflicted on him, are captured within the confines of a very small number of pages. This is really a good piece on why you should care not just about Batman as an intellectual property, but Bruce Wayne as a person. And in this book, Batman is actually going to kill the Joker, but James Gordon eventually convinces him not to, but he was really going to do it. And also, a direct connection between this and what I was speaking about last week is Jason Todd comes back from the dead, although it turns out to be a hoax, although the hoax turns out to be a hoax. Because comic books, it can never, you've always got to have another one, which means the ending can never be the end. But that's all I'm going to say about Hush. It's 2 books, well worth the price of admission. And I'm going to speak about what happens next week. The return of Hush is awful. I did do a attempt to inking a previous Bison picture this week. I don't quite think I got where I was trying to go. I just wanted to use some heavy blacks, but I couldn't really figure out what I was trying to do because it was too ephemeral to my actual application of my tools. And yet again, the reason I'm talking about comic books this much is to mask me doing my own. I'm still figuring out how to pace and fill 10 comic books. And this week it was, I'm dealing with the most emotional and resonant part of the story, and I've paced it wrong, and I've kind of almost had to skip it. I've got the next issue to try and pad out the things I wanted to put in this one. I don't know it's going to turn out like that, but at the end of the day, the point is that I make a book. It doesn't actually have to be a good book. It just has to be professional in its execution. And speaking of professional in its execution, again, Saturday I'm continuing with this little Smiley Show by accident thing I've got going on, where I'll just spend, 45 minutes or something every Saturday working on a Smiley Show until it turns into something plausibly readable. And, this was kind of a meme start where Batman is in the Batcave watching a Smiley Show, and that's how the first page is. As time goes on, it's starting to look a bit more like Stately Wayne Manor and the Batcave as I, add black and add detail and try and figure out what it was I was trying to draw in the first place without actually going through the process of caring about what it is and kind of psyching myself out of improving it and, staying the course. So it's looking good. The book is behind schedule, but progress is still being made. And I imagine it's going to be more of the same, but probably a little bit of a quicker pace this week coming. So that's the end of Pecha Kucha 289, and I will see you next time.